turning out here. There's a big threat going on. There's a threat in this town. There's a threat in this country. There's a threat to the NHS, and we know what's happening here with the A&E. There's a big problem here, and we need to put that right in the spotlight. You could have been sitting at home, you could have been watching football or going shopping or anything else, but you've taken it upon yourselves to come out here and show that you care. So I think you ought to give yourself a big round of applause. This has been the biggest demonstration and march and show of feeling in Weston since probably the time of the suffragettes. So Weston has woken up and is fighting back. I mentioned at the start that this is a national problem with the NHS, and there's different hospitals having different problems, and we've got a specific problem here with A&E in Weston, but there's other hospitals in Somerset that have problems as well. And there's a guy here who's come all the way from Shepton, a very, very long way, who's involved in the Shepton Hospital campaign. And with your forbearance, I'm going to give him a couple of minutes just to explain what's happening in Shepton. So, Ant.
Well, thank you, Richard, and thank you all for inviting us down to join this excellent event here in Weston-super-Mare. We're all 100% behind you, all that way over in Shepton Manor, and good luck with that. I just wanted to take the couple of minutes that Richard has offered me to explain something about what's happening in Shepton, which had a fully manned, fully staffed, excellent community hospital, which the local trust decided needed to close because those nurses were needed somewhere else. Which is, I'm sympathetic to an extent. You've got resource issues to manage, but if you refuse to pay nurses properly, don't be surprised when they go and find something else to do. If you don't train nurses, train doctors to work in these hospitals, but instead rely on poaching fully trained people from India, from the Philippines, or anywhere else, and if you recruit them from the European Union and then you vote to Brexit and you give Europeans a hard time, don't be surprised when they clear off back to France, back to Spain. This is all entirely predictable, entirely manageable, and it's time we had someone else in charge. Thank you very much, Weston Superman.
A strong movement. We are building a strong movement. We are building a strong movement. People join the fight.
It's a hospital campaign, and we all feel quite deeply about it because we're all users of the NHS. I know, having brought up 2 accident-prone daughters in this area, frequent users of A&E, and Weston Hospital I have always had exemplary service from, and I think they're CCG may differ, but I think they're absolutely brilliant myself. The staff there are doing a fantastic job under trying circumstances and reduced resources. So who knows better about what's happening in the NHS than the doctors themselves? And we now have Richard Lawson, who's a member of the Green Party, a Green Party activist and a retired GP. He's on next. Richard.
Thank you, Richard. And thank you all for coming here. It's a great turnout. One of my patients, when I was a GP, when he was a kid, Nye Bevan used to go to his house to chat with his father, and he heard Nye say that now we've got the NHS, but if we abuse it, we will lose it. And right now, 70 years later, we are in the process, sadly, of losing Weston's A&E. Since July, it has been closed at night because of difficulties getting doctors. This is a national problem in getting A&E doctors, but it's made worse by Weston's small size. Weston always has been underfunded. When I came here 30, 40 years ago, it was underfunded, and it still is. And it's also underbedded. With A&E, there is always a problem of whether to go to a smaller A&E, which is closer, or a larger A&E, which will have more in-depth specialties. This, however, is a problem that ambulance personnel can solve themselves quite accurately by making a good judgment, provided the ambulance personnel are not overworked. What the closure of A&E of Weston has done is to make the A&E, the ambulance service, in fact worse. So it's a vicious circle. And it is a problem of resources. The ambulance service is under-resourced, and the NHS generally is under-resourced. There is no doubt whatsoever about this. In 2014, NHS spending per capita per year was 3,979 quid. Netherlands, Sweden and Germany, the figure was always in excess of 5,000 odd. So that is a huge increase. In France, it was 4,637. The European average, and that includes a lot of poorer countries who've just come into the euro, the average was 4,166. So here we are down at 3,971. 137 billion a year and 7.5% of our GDP. That resource has been falling since the Tories came in and has been falling since 2012. But what I want to talk about is that it's not just that low notional given budget, but that there are also hidden cuts that are occurring, which are very, very significant. First of all, litigation is rising. It's £1 billion a year, and that is clearly a vicious circle. The harder the NHS is stressed, the more medical accidents are going to occur. Second, bed blocking. The lack of provision of social care, so you've got people who are ready to go out of hospital, can't get out of hospital. That costs £1 billion a year. Private finance initiative of the way of paying, that costs £2 billion a year to the NHS. Agency staff, it gets worse. Agency staff cost £3 billion a year. The internal market costs £4 billion a year. Money thrown away on stupid bureaucracy. Yeah. Totally thrown away. And then health inflation, which is accounted for by population increase, aging, sorry, that's me, and the medical technology, that costs £5 billion a year. So in total, those hidden health costs add up to £16 billion a year, £16 billion a year, taken away from a £137 billion, which is the notional budget. That adds up to 12% below what we should be, which is still a big percentage behind the European. So how the NHS manages to function at this kind of thing is a huge tribute to the dedicated staff who work within the NHS. Yes, fantastic people, and to all those who are here, thank you very much. But it's also a huge condemnation to the abuse that the Tory politicians, especially Jeremy Hunt, has been pouring onto the NHS. This is a massive story, and there's so much more to be said. Not least, I have to say this as a Green, that 1/5 of the present NHS budget is spent trying to treat problems caused by unemployment, bad housing, pollution, and inequality. Those four things, 1/5 of the NHS clinical budget, at least, is being spending on those ridiculous problems caused by stupid politicians doing stupid politics. So we have enough here now to know that Nye Bevan, if he was present with us, could see that the NHS that he created has been abused. The question for us now is, have we got the guts to stand up and say that we will not take this anymore, that we are going to change it round and support our NHS. Thank you.
As we come marching, marching, we bring you hope at last. The rising of the wind is the rising of the clouds. No more that grudge and bind.
Other people who know what they're talking about are the people who have been suffering from the cuts that have been going on right at the sharp end for the last 7 years. I think it's safe to say that any working person or any person less than a billionaire or millionaire has been suffering in the last 7 years, but some a lot more than others. Disabled people have a massively, really hard time of it. DPAC has been a campaigning organisation trying to put the rights of disabled people at the forefront, and I'm really pleased to introduce today, we have here Karen Passmore from DPAC.
Hello Weston.
Hello.
I'm Karen and I'm here representing DPAC, Disabled People Against Cuts. I hope you have heard of us. We are a disabled people's organisation and we've been leading the campaign against the brutal Tory austerity cuts, and in particular those that are targeted against all disabled people. Be it the closure of the Independent Living Fund for those with high support needs, which we took all the way to the Supreme Court, or savage cuts to employment support allowance, which has seen thousands of disabled people forced into so-called work activity, despite it being clear they are unfit to be able to do so, or to the changes to disability living allowance to PIP, which has seen over 600,000 people, disabled people, losing their right to support and access to mobility cars and wheelchairs due to the flawed and unfair assessments by DWP contractors such as Atos, Maximus and Capita. Together with others, we have forced the United Nations to investigate this Tory government over their cruel and inhumane cuts to disabled people, with them recently finding the government guilty of a human catastrophe over the cuts they imposed upon disabled people. Today we are here protesting over the overnight closure of Weston General A&E department, which is now 4 months old. I'm sorry, but I don't have any magic solutions to offer, but I can highlight why this is happening and the dire consequences for us all if this closure is not reversed. Anyone can use the hospital A&E, but there are some who are much more frequent users than other patients, predominantly those with severe health conditions. Like myself, if I ever call a GP or ambulance overnight, it is almost guaranteed I will be admitted into hospital overnight via A&E. I'm very lucky, I live in Southmead, 10 minutes away from the new hospital. But what if I lived in Weston? It's a good 30-minute drive to Southmead Hospital. That's if I still have my mobility car, or a family to take me. Or it's an ambulance, if any are available. But even then it's still a 30-minute drive, and over 1 hour if it must come from Bristol first. If taken to Southmead overnight, how do you get back home afterwards? You can't take a train, as the wheelchair users must pre-book train travel 24 hours in advance. And the first bus to Weston is in the morning. That's if you can get a wheelchair on it, as a bus which is not always possible. The overnight closure is a disaster for all disabled people as well as the local population. Not only does it deprive you of urgent medical treatments, it also increases the demand on other hospitals and inevitably increases waiting time for all. If reports are true, soon no one will be able to go to the A&E department without first calling the GP first for permission. How much longer is this going to add to the time now needed for any of you to have to visit Southmead Hospital instead? Your MP, John Penrose, is quoted as saying that he is talking to health ministers and the clinical commissioning group about the closure. But he neglects to say that he has supported the Tory government and voted for all the healthcare reforms.
Just like every other Tory.
He has supported the deliberate underfunding of all hospitals across the UK to increase NHS privatisation, which has partially led to this closure. His party has subjected the NHS to a pay cap for years, which has led to nurses having to rely upon food banks, and even today he refuses to lift it. No wonder staff morale is so low. This Tory government has ended the nurseries training bursary, leading to even fewer nurses training. More cuts to the health education budget has led to fewer doctors being trained, and with a clear racist agenda pursued by this government over EU immigrants and those from elsewhere, this has led to a drastic fall in NHS professionals not renewing their contracts and seeking employment elsewhere in the world where they feel more valued. People of Weston, you have a choice at the next election if you want to keep your local hospital and have your own A&E department. It's to elect an MP and a government that puts people first. And is willing to fully fund the NHS and all other essential care services. That government will not be a Conservative one. I thank you.
Who was going to be here was Tim Taylor, who unfortunately cannot make it. Tim Taylor was the prospective Labour Party candidate last time, and hopefully this time when the election takes place, the way things are going by Christmas. In his place we've got Dave Townsend.
Thank you for coming today. There's a lot of organisations. I'd first like to thank everyone who's helped organise this today. Unfortunately Tim Taylor couldn't be here today, and I jumped at the last minute to do a speech instead. Unfortunately he has had a bereavement in the family, so our wishes do go out to Tim today. Okay, today we're here to let Western Area Health Trust, Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire Care Commissioning Group and the government know that we will not stand for the ongoing threat to our Accident and Emergency Department. I'm sorry to say that despite being invited, our local Conservative MPs, Liam Fox and John Penrose, turned us down with an opportunity to speak at this event.
Where's our MP?
Analysis by the Labour Party shows that if Theresa May oversees a collapse of our services on the same scale the NHS was last year, 10,000 more people will be waiting more than 4 hours in any A&E every day, with hundreds of operations cancelled and waiting lists growing above the 18-week current limit. Last year, Theresa May stuck her head in the sand and refused to give the NHS the money it needed to keep services running. This decision has pushed the NHS staff beyond their limits and caused misery for patients in every part of the country. It can't be allowed to continue. It directly affects us in Weston-super-Mare and North Somerset with our overnight closure of the A&E. We are calling for our Accident and Emergency Department at Weston General Hospital to be reopened as a 24/7 fully functioning department able to cope with major traumas. North Somerset and Weston-super-Mare has a population of around 225,000 people. It's served by Weston General. Estimates are that this area could see as many as 40 to 50,000 more people in the next 25 years. These new residents will mostly be young families with children and the elderly. These two groups rely on the NHS and good services. As a matter of comparison, Bath in North East Somerset has a population of around 200,000, yet we don't see the A&E at the Royal United Hospital under threat, as it's a more visible hospital in the scheme of things for the government.
Jacob and Rees-Mogg might need to go there one day as well.
Indeed. At the moment, our A&E is not 24/7, it is 14/7. Our A&E is closed from 10 o'clock in the evening to 8 o'clock in the morning, and overnight our area is covered by just 2 ambulances from the South West Ambulance Trust. If you have the misfortune to be taken ill at night, you will be transported to Southmead, the BRI, the Bristol Children's Hospital or Musgrove Park. These hospitals are themselves facing cuts, and the additional load the overnight closure of Western A&E is placing on them is stretching their services to breaking point. We have been told that the A&E in Weston closed due to safety concerns over the staffing levels in the department. What has actually happened since the closure is that a senior specialist emergency department consultant has left and gone to Yeovil, and a significant number of emergency department nurses have also quit. So this overnight closure has in fact caused a further deterioration of the staffing levels. It has not had the effect that they told us it would have. We want the Health Trust and the CCG to provide emergency medicine delivery that this area, the fastest growing in Europe, requires. It is not acceptable for the government, the Health Trust or the CCG to stumble into crisis after crisis when they've been warned that they need to take action now. The underfunding of the NHS over the last 7 years has been catastrophic for both nurses and patients. Our NHS now faces a 40,000 shortfall in nurses because of the reduction in training places, 7 years of capped pay and the scrapping of nurses' bursaries for training. Our country must bring back bursaries for nurse training and give nurses the pay rise they deserve as we have to combat the current recruitment crisis. Locally, we have a serious shortage of GPs, and this area also suffers underfunding for social services. These are 2 major pressures on our accident and emergency service. People who cannot see their GP are reporting to A&E as the first port of call, and people being let down by social services and mental health teams are leaning on accident and emergency to try and get the help they need. We must see a greater degree of cooperation between the NHS and social services and a commensurate increase in the funding of social services to better allow the management of people flowing through our hospitals to free up beds for acutely ill people. We must also see a complete change in how we approach mental health services. In North Somerset, our local provision of psychologists and psychiatrists is well below what is required. This is especially true in children's mental health care. As I said, this puts extra pressure on A&E and our already overstretched and underfunded hospital. We must protect our country's most precious of assets, the NHS. The people of North Somerset deserve better. It's mine, it's yours, it's our NHS. Let's save Weston A&E.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. Is there already holding common
broad-based coalition here to try and get changes for A&E, changes for the better. It is a broad-based coalition, and to that extent we issued invites to all political, well, not UKIP, I mean, come on, you have to draw a line somewhere. We do have standards. It's a fairly broad political coalition. We invited the Conservatives along. We wrote out to a lot of Conservative associations and Conservative MPs and invited them along. Apart from a straight no from Liam Fox and a reply from our glorious leader within this constituency, Mr Penrose, at the very last minute imposing preconditions on turning up, which obviously we couldn't meet. None of the others replied. But as I say, we're a broad coalition here, and
It's expensive.
and to that extent, I'd like now to invite someone here who's a leading Lib Dem and who has been a campaigner for the hospital, and in that light has turned up here and made the effort to turn up here and speak to the assembled throng. So, Mike Bell.
So much everyone for turning up, and a big thank you as well to Western Labour and the unions and all those that have been involved in organising this. The NHS is too important just for party politics. We've all got to work together to hold the buggers to account, because the bottom line is that we've got a Conservative government and local Conservative MPs who behave as if all of this is some sort of act of God and that it's all out of their control, and that there's nothing that can be done about it, and that at management level, in terms of the NHS systems and in terms of funding for our health and social care service, it's nothing to do with them. Well, I'm afraid we've got to disabuse them of that, because unfortunately the decisions that they make every day have consequences and they need to be brought home to the decision makers. So it's really disappointing that the Conservatives haven't bothered to turn up today, because even if they don't want to listen to what people have got to say, we certainly want to hear what they've got to say and what their justification is for some of the decisions that they've made locally. So we need to be absolutely crystal clear. We want our A&E open. We want it to be a 24-hour service. We want it fit for purpose to serve the people of this community, not just in Weston-super-Mare, but beyond in northern Somerset. And we need to send that message strongly and repeatedly so that they deliver upon it. That's the job of politicians at the end of the day. It's their job to listen to what we say and deliver it. And if they cannot deliver it, then we know what we can do about it, and that is to vote them out. So I just want to applaud everyone for coming along, really appreciate it, and let's keep going.
Unfortunately, we're now at the stage of our last speaker, our headline speaker. I'm really bigging you up here, Tanya. This is someone who's a leading activist within Unison, who the union that is at the forefront of the fight against the cuts. A former health service worker, a personal friend, and a great speaker. Follow that, Tanya.
I think I might have to do this speech in the medium of an expressionist dance now to live up to that expectation. But you know what, people? I'm angry. Are you angry? Yes! There's about bloody tie all in it together. Are you joking me? If you're a banker, or maybe I should replace that with a W. If you're a banker, you're all right. If you're a consultant that's providing services to the NHS and you're £18 billion that's gone on, the advice generally from those consultants is shut down A&Es, shut down departments, make it more difficult. These sustainability and transformation plans, I think should be called scrap the people plans, because actually what they're going to do is they're going to put all our lives at risk. They are shutting down Western A&E, they're shutting down a number of A&Es across the country actually, and they did this by stealth. They did this in secret. They didn't tell us, they didn't consult us, because they want to scrap the people, in my view. When I worked in A&E, I started in the 80s under a Tory government. We didn't have enough pillows, we didn't have enough staff. We were doing everything that we could to try and make those people's lives better and more comfortable under adverse circumstances. And now we've got the Tories back again, and what are they doing? Scrapping the people! nurses can't get educated, they can't go and do their student nurse training like I did. I was an employee of the hospital at the time, I even had a pension. God forbid. And they're now saying that we can't get enough nurses and doctors to run Weston A&E. Well, there's a reason for that, because you're stopping people getting access to that training. You're making them pay for it. That is bonkers. Do you know what? The Royal Society of Medicine last week said that due to the health and social care cuts, 30,000 people had died. 30,000 people had died. Well, I tell you, there's going to be a spike in those figures here in Weston. Those deaths are coming. Those people who can't access A&E overnight, that have had a stroke or a heart attack or have been subject to serious trauma, they need care quickly. They need it within a very definite time space. That is what makes the treatment work. How are you going to get up that M5 with all those roadworks at the moment? How are people going to get there quickly? And it's all of us that are going to be the scrapped people. We are going to be the scrap people. Well, it's now time that we come together, because we need our together, not their all together, which is only about a couple of people, a few people at the bloody top. It's about us standing together and saying, we determine what we want, not you people. You listen to us, you provide the services we pay for and that we need, and then you get off your asses, get out there and do something about it. Look, as Knight Bevan said, we'll have an NHS there if we're ready to fight for it. It's bloody time we fought, and we fought hard. Good luck, people!